Prezens was my rig, but in its full studio glory. So, I've got all my funny guitars, right? The the, the tan one with the mic. Most of the guitars have microphones built into them for feedback purposes. Um, Most of them have inputs on them for accepting signals from other sources and being able to switch from playing guitar to accepting or sampling a signal from another source. Um, the Cole guitars all have that. The brown guitar that I played last night. Um, I'm using some Stratocaster style guitars right now that don't have those special features, but I love the guitars. Um, I'm playing a DePergo guitar and a Tyler guitar that don't have those features, but they will soon. They're the only guitars I have that don't have the microphones and the 60 cycle hum switch and the inputs. But DePergo is working on a guitar for me right now, a Stratocaster style guitar that has that stuff kind of hidden in it. The studio rig was actually I believe it was only the Cole guitar, the brown one that I played last night when I was making all the feedback noises. And my regular rig, which is VHT amplifiers, Bob Burt speaker cabinets made by Bob Burt with Celestion speakers. My effects rig is not like a typical guitarist's effects rig. It's a full-on sampling rig, real-time sampling rig, with a repeater, Echoplex Digital Pro, and a modified Lexicon PCM42 with 20 seconds of delay, a Lexicon PCM 80, 81 only for reverb, PCM 80. There is another audio processor that sits on top of my rack that looks like a keyboard, which is a Nord modular synthesizer, which I use only as a MIDI controller for whatever I've sampled into the repeater, that I can repitch whatever I've played or sampled into the repeater in real time. But it also acts as another audio effects processor. It has some very interesting. I only use the programs that I've written for it, which took me months, and they're combinations of distortions, reverbs, and various bit and sampling rate changers for lo-fi effects. And the more ambient, typically the device that I use for pretty ambient loops is the Lexicon PCM42, the old thing. Its output feeds this Nord modular so that I can take an atemporal or seemingly atemporal loop, contradiction in terms, but I can take a seemingly non-rhythmic loop that's in the PCM42, I feed it through my Nord modular program that I've written, and can then manipulate that non-rhythmic loop into rhythmic real time, in real time. So, and in that same rack is a mixer, and as you know, a good probably 70% of the time I'm playing, one of my hands is on the mixer. And there's probably a good 15 or 20% of the time that both of my hands are on the mixer and my feet are working pedals. And within that mixer is my original guitar signal, and any sound I'm making in my rig is capable of being sampled in real time. Sampled, looped, beautiful, ugly, whatever, manipulated. That all goes into that rack. But at the same time, in this live last night, I only used one microphone. In the studio, I set up a microphone in front of each of the other players. goes into another small mixer. That mixer feeds my big mixer, which goes to my guitar amps, my normal mixer. And on the little mixer, I can decide whom I'm sampling and modifying in real time. Typically on a live gig, especially when there's no setup time, I'm only sampling Tim. I'll pick one player. Usually it's Tim because he's great to sample. And it's so clear when it happens, you know. So that is not to say that all of these different things that I'm sampling are separated. The point of sampling them in my guitar rig and having them come out of the guitar rig is in fact so that I can mix them together. So one sample may be in fact a little bit of me and a bunch of Tim cut up in different ways in real time. And if Tim's not playing, the microphone will pick up Tom, so I might get a little bit of drums in there. And in the studio, it's much easier to hear these things and control them. I have a separate mic for everybody. And it's fairly simple, although it sounds like it's not. And that pretty much describes the rig. Everything is modulatable. Everything is sampleable, and it all comes out stereo pair of my effects rack through two tube guitar amps. Well, most of the time I play with my fingers. I mainly use the pick if I want to play something that feels more idiomatically correct, like if I'm playing something that wants to be like faster and slightly better articulated, I'll use the pick, but mostly I use the pick for special effects. Because it's a pick that a stone pick that I think Barry took. I think we have some really bad pictures of. It's a stone pick that I've had since 1979 that we cut very fine, tiny little grooves in. I mean, so fine that a jeweler had to do it because we couldn't really achieve it any other way without making a groove so deep that the string would just catch in it. It's super fine little scratchy grooves, so you can actually hold it sideways. It's cut into the grooves are cut into the side of the pick, so you turn the pick sideways, and I bow the string with it up above the top of the fretboard, so I can actually play typically only on the E string where it makes sense, the highest notes. I can play all the notes that are available between the top of the fretboard and the bridge, which is quite a few notes. And there are some other effects that you can do with it on the bowing side that include using the pick as both a bow and a new bridge, actually stopping the tone behind the pick. So when you're bowing it, it is the bridge. So when you do that, you create by the nature of the fixed design of frets on a guitar neck, you've then changed the scale length of the string, but the frets are acting as if they're being divided equally amongst a typical Western octave. Well, they aren't anymore. Once you move the bridge forward but keep the frets stationary, the frets take on a whole new meaning. It's a very interesting way that I found in the 80s of like mechanical way of playing, very clearly playing certain microtonal kinds of phrases, you know.